A bit.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Please, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
You are a general candidate?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And how many attempts have you made so far?
So this is my fourth attempt.
Fourth attempt.
Yes, sir.
And the first interview?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what was your optional?
So in the forest services, it is geology and forestry.
Forest service?
Yes.
For forest service.
Okay. And what was your optional?
In civils, so political science.
Political science.
Yes, sir.
PSIR?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. You have mentioned TED Talks as one of your interests.
Yes, sir.
Why is it called TED Talks?
So, yes, sir. So, TED stands for Technology, Entertainment and Design.
And?
It's an abbreviation.
Design.
Yeah, please speak a little louder. Please.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, which is your most favorite TED Talk?
Yes, sir. So there's a public speaker known as Simon Sinek. So it's his talk known as Start with Why. So it's about the art of storytelling. So wherein he tells us that we should always start with why, and then with what, and then with how. So he goes on to tell us about interesting marketing campaigns and political campaigns that centered around these strategies and how they succeeded.
So, what is the name of this guy?
Simon Sinek.
Simon.
How do you pronounce?
How
How
do
do
you
you write
spell?
Sinek?
Simon Sinek.
Sinek. Okay.
SINO.
So
Simon. Simon and then
Simon तो ठीक है.
SINEK.
SINEK. Sinek. Okay. All right. He has many talks, or this is the only one?
So he has a lot of other his own channel, but TED Talk is mainly this one.
This is the only TED Talk is about that. I asked the question why, and it's about storytelling. Yeah, very interesting. So, well, okay. I don't know whether you studied history in school.
Yes, sir.
Was it a popular subject? Did you like it?
So I liked it, but among other students, it was not among the favorite.
So why is it that although every child in our childhood, all of us have grown up hearing stories, but we don't like history?
Yes.
So why?
So I can think of two reasons why. So first, these days there's a popular conception that history is just about wars and dates and names of rulers, and this part of it, which leads to a lot of rote learning, is not appreciated by students. And number two, sir, there is an increasing weightage given towards science and mathematics these days because of the rise of engineering and doctor as the preferred choice of professions. So a lot of social sciences and languages are given a backseat, wherein they are only seen as means to achieve a good percentage and having little relevance later in life.
Okay. Also, you were involved with Teach for India.
Yes, sir.
What exactly is this scheme?
Yes, sir. So Teach for India is an NGO, sir, which works pan-India, and it partners with government and private schools, wherein it supplies fellows and volunteers to augment the capacity of such schools, which usually are running low on staff, particularly teaching. So they supply these volunteers and fellows, and also help in policy formation for not just the schools but also on a larger scale for governments.
Can you tell me something about the history of forestry, scientific forestry in India?
Yes, sir. So, before the British, there's not a lot of documented history of forestry. In 1860s, a certain Dr. Brandes is known as the father of Indian forestry. So, under him began the age of scientific forestry management in India, and he established a lot of institutions, including the.
Fair enough. I have two questions to you. When Mr. Brandes started the so-called scientific forestry in India, how would you react if I said that it was not so scientific because the scientific study of forests was not possible in the time span? Trees have been longer on the planet thousands of years, and the scientific study was basically the facade under which the colonial exploitation of forest resources of this country could continue. I would submit for your consideration the proposition that when the British wanted to, shall we say, have tea plantations, they needed wood for tea chests, they needed wood for laying down sleepers in railway lines and construction, etc. All this led to the so-called conservation of forest. And if I suppose complicate life for you by asking a question, that while the documentation of wildlife forestry in India may not be possible, but they were something like sacred groves, which were maintained, which were preserved, which were consecrated, which could not be chopped down. So there was, you have the one part both in Mahabharata and Ramayana, and it tells you the story of forests being cut down, urbanization moving down, people living in the forest having a conflict with the people who are expanding. So it is not as if there was no conservation of forests or trees in pre-British times. Devband is started off as a sacred grove called Devavan. You have Buddhist Jataks which talk of Kanan Ekamravan. So I would question this proposition that the British started scientific forestry or conservation.
So I do support your proposition that definitely, with regards to the notion of scientific forestry, it is definitely having tinges of colonial legacy, wherein the so-called scientific management did, of course, was designed in a way to support colonial needs of timber, particularly for railway sleepers and other furniture and other needs. Before that, as you rightly pointed out, there was a rich legacy of sustainable forest and human relations, where even from where I come from, there is a concept known as Devrai, similar to the concept of sacred groves. The only thing being that the scientific management per se, wherein a lot of principles and laws and theories were and documentation were done, is the reason why we actually called that scientific management started with the British and Dr. Brandis. But truly, in the true essence of the subject, is certainly timeless.
No, I have another problem. It's not only timeless. When the British ruled India, there were 567 odd princely states, and they managed their hunting lodges, they had their shikargahs, they had their reserves, forests, etc. Ranthambore is one, and one could mention many more. I'll leave it at that. I'll pass you on to Mr. Suru.
Okay, Yash, let's just see a little bit on international relations. I was just reading a Twitter account by Happymon Jacob, and he poses this following question. What does the US/West want? End the war by negotiating a deal between Russia and Ukraine, or weaken Russia? What do you think?
Can I take a moment to
Please.
Yes, sir. So, sir, any foreign policy cannot be considered a monolith, wherein there are competing interests, even in a single country, each chasing different aims. Certainly today, in the United States/West, there is an urgent desire to end the war. Because not just for the primary reason of maintaining peace and security in Eastern Europe, but also because of the ramification the war has across the world, economic, political, and so on. Secondly, sir, the hawks in the US foreign policy would definitely want that the war prolong a little bit, so as to weaken the Russian resurgence that we are seeing, especially with President Putin coming to power. However, what I think we need to understand is that the war just does not weaken the Russia. It is also, in different measures, weakening the West as well. Certainly, in most sense, economic sense. We are seeing the impact of price rise, particularly in petrol and other supply chain issues. So, it's not that the war will only damage Russia. So, in that sense, overall, looking at the foreign policy stance of Mr. Biden, if I were to present an opinion, I believe that they would want to end the war as quickly as possible. But if there is a chance that they can, while achieving the same, pin down Russia and try to contain its power, they would definitely do so.
It's a very interesting take. Although the US Defense Secretary was in Moscow, and he made the claim that our aim is to degrade Russian military capability to the extent that they are not able to attack any other country. Now, one of the main aims of President Putin in his special military operation in Ukraine was to deter any non-NATO member countries from joining NATO, right? That if you look at Ukraine, try to join NATO, and this is what we have done to Ukraine. But now Finland has decided to join NATO. I mean, more or less, once the president and prime minister have declared that they should join NATO, 60 to 80% of the population supports now joining NATO. Is this a victory for Russia or is this a setback for Russia?
So the growing of the opposition camp, that is NATO, is definitely not a victory for Russia. I'm quite certain that this would not be the consequence that they would have intended for. Although they would have factored it, but it is definitely not desirable for Russia that more and more nations join NATO. Especially
why did Finland remain neutral all these years since the Second World War? You know, Finland did not join NATO. Even though all the Baltic republics immediately joined NATO, Finland did not join NATO.
So I'm not aware of the exact reasons.
Because once actually Russia had invaded Finland.
Yes, during the
and
World
Finland
War.
was very wary of antagonizing Russia, so that they wanted to keep a foot in both camps, so to speak. But now the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, perhaps they thought that their security would be much better secured as a buffer state and rather as a camp.
Correct.
At least before.
In fact, that's called Finlandization.
Finlandization. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And now Sweden may also follow suit. So now, looking at it overall perspective, do you think the invasion of Ukraine was a masterstroke by President Putin or was it a big strategic mistake?
So I think now looking back at how the war has progressed, it was not a masterstroke. I believe President Putin would have wanted the operation to be quick and get over with
surgical.
With surgical strike, as we can call it. But probably they did not anticipate the resistance that Ukraine is putting, especially with Western help. And definitely, as the war draws on, political and economic troubles even within Russia are now starting to surface, which are definitely not desirable for President Putin.
I'm very happy with your answers. Pass you on to Professor Tripathi.
You are from Ahmednagar.
Yes, I was born there. Yes, sir.
Born there. It's a rain shadow area. But in rain shadow area, as you know, that the hues, the water scarcity and the precipitation pattern has never been favorable to the human habitation. But in the recent times, the Ahmednagar is also known for the watershed management and aggregate businesses. From far away and from distant, it looks just a little odd. So can you tell us, using your local experience, the water management that Ahmednagar is taking?
Yes, sir. So as you mentioned, Ahmednagar is the rain shadow region and certainly faces a lot of scarcity of rainfall. So in there, regarding water management practices, I would like to draw your attention to two case studies, that is Ralegan Siddhi and Hivre Bajar Samiti. So both of these villages are in the Ahmednagar district and are today known as the best practices, are known for the best practices for water management, led by Anna Hazare in Ralegan Siddhi and Popatra Pawar in...
Who had innovated it? Or rather, made the idea practical and fruitful?
So I believe it would be Mr. Anna Hazare in Ralegan Siddhi.
So he is considered to be the innovator of this, the watershed management.
In Ahmednagar, yes. Overall, I'm not aware of as the science of it, I'm not entirely aware. But in Ahmednagar district, definitely he was one of the first people to pioneer these practices.
In our country, for example, as you know that you're going to become an officer in the Indian Forest Service, one of the biggest problems that we are facing is the forest fire. Although you can say that it's a global problem, Amazon forests are on fire, then California, then Australia. But the question is that let's talk about India. And recently you might have seen that the Nagaland, the Manipur, the border area, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Do you think that some of the measures that we are taking to fight for the forest fire in our country appears to be we are not taking it very seriously, no scientific measures are taken and the forest fire goes on, a few forest officers are sent to those areas and they take to the primitive or rather the very old ways of tackling it?
Yes, sir, definitely. In India, forest fires is a major problem, as nearly 21% of Indian forests is classified as highly to extremely vulnerable to forests. However, sir, I would beg to differ with you on this proposition, wherein India is among the nations which is known for its scientific management of forest fires, and we have taken some good technological and policy and administrative measures to tackle the fires. However, definitely.
Can you mention some?
Yes.
Otherwise, it would sound a very rhetorical statement.
Yes, sir. So for example, we have a satellite system, MODIS, MODIS, and VRIIN. So both of these systems are used
The
by
help of ISRO and
yes, sir, with the help of ISRO and
but in
NASA.
the recent enough few years, we are hearing about it. How far it's effective? For example, the last year, the forest fire that engulfed the major part of the very fragile area of Uttarakhand as well. And unfortunately, we did not see something very effective, the measure being taken up.
Right. So, sir, regarding the MODIS system, yes, they are recent, but sir, FSI has been credited with using these systems and incorporating with the SMS alert systems and for integrated cells that they are creating for fire in extremely vulnerable regions. So these cells get real-time updates about the forest fire in a very small region, a grid that they've created across India. So every forester and guard and ranger gets SMS updates on these. So we are definitely moving towards a very good system. Naturally, given India's vast forest and its vulnerability to forest because of the climate and the increasing climate change, we are not definitely where we would want to be, but we are growing. And so regarding the Uttarakhand forest, so there, although we found out the fire late. But later it was controlled very quickly, and even recently, sir, in Sariska and Simlipal reserves, where these forests were taken place, we were appreciated for the quick response wherein we called after we realized that it is not possible to douse the fire.
Just one more thing, as you know that the several regions, the several causative factors can lead to the forest fires. It could even be the lightning,
yes,
but then the lightning is extremely rare.
Yes, sir.
The most important one is the human factor.
The human-induced fire, yes, sir.
And human-induced fire, when we talk about in India, for example, there is a cultural, social and economic, the life intertwined with the forests. It's not merely economic. So in that context, do you think that we need to make people even more aware of some of their activities which possibly could lead to the forest fire? Or they should have known for the thousands of years of tradition themselves that what makes the forest vulnerable? Or do we need to make them aware more?
So yes, certainly. Although they do know, and they are known to be tribals are known to sustainably live with forests, but certainly increasingly we are seeing instances wherein not just tribals but other traditional forest dwellers and tourists are indulging in certain behavior that is leading to anthropogenic fires. And as they say, nearly 75% of such fires are led by man-made reasons. So we definitely need to work more on awareness and ensuring that such bad habits, such as tourism, even small
anthropogenic factors that you are mentioning, can you mention one or two activities? Because
yes,
as an officer, probably you will take up on yourself, at least in your area, to making people aware of that. So which do you think that the...
Yes, sir. So activities such as slash and burn agriculture that the tribals engage in. So secondly, sir,
but slash and burn agriculture is not prevalent everywhere, especially
so
I think it's very rapidly decreasing as well.
Yes, sir. So in Northeast, it is still rampant.
The jhum that you were talking
yes,
about.
Jhum cultivation.
Of
course, in mainland, it is significantly reduced. But sir, along with that, other activities that may lead to it is when sir tourists.
But jhum is the deliberate activity. I'm talking about the accidental. Or people being callous. Jhum has got a social economic purpose for that.
Yes, sir.
I'm not supporting that, but at least socio-economic purpose for that. But callous or the careless activities.
Yes, sir. So this is mainly seen in non-traditional forest dwellers, sir. So such as tourists, wherein for camping, we've seen a lot of times in these reserves or in reserve forests when they go for camping, certain bonfires or cigarette butts or other small fires are left unattended, which then have a tendency of growing into massive fires. So this is definitely a problem. And sir, also among the accidental ones, although mainly it is the tourist one, but among the intentional ones, the poachers are known for lighting fire so as to lure the wildlife out of a certain region, and which makes it much easier to hunt.
Okay, thank you.
I think you are excellent. I was very happy with the answers you gave me. I think Mr. Swaroop is very happy. and I'm sure that Professor Tripathi has the same view, I don't think you should have too much problem getting into the forest service. I think some of your answers in international relations, do you credit even for civil service if you are doing that? But this year you are only doing the forest service, so we'll leave it at that. And we know that the date is not available for your interviews. Are you doing a job somewhere, or you have not
No,
taken
sir,
up a
no,
job?
no.
So I just request the chairperson to.
Yes, so before this, however, I have done 11, I've served for 11 months in 2017-18 in ZS Associates in Pune.
In?
ZS Associates, Zoltner Sena Associates
Oh,
in
alright.
Pune. Yes, sir.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah, you have to be particular about your dress.
Okay, sir.
Your shoes are casual shoes, so they will not go. Shoes with laces.
Okay, sir.
Your short socks will not do. Long socks.
Okay.
Shirt should be white.
Okay, sir.
That's formal. Otherwise, your suit is smart. You are smart. Only these two things you take care of.
Certainly, sir.
Now, two things which we advise everybody. One, that mostly questions are asked from DAF, so you have to master your DAF. Every possible question which can arise out of every word that you have written. Kopargaon.
Kopargaon.
Kopargaon. Why is it so named? What is the origin and so on? Suvarna. Whatever you have written can lead to questions. So be prepared. Then you have to master your newspapers. Which newspapers do you read?
Indian Express.
Only Indian Express. Do you think we should advise him to add Hindu also
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, if you add Indian Express also, together they are a very good combination. And then take notes from them, detailed notes in bullets for clarity, and keep on updating them and revising them.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you have any question?
No, sir, I just wanted to, regarding the way I speak, is it a little too fast?
No,
No,
sorry.
you are just perfect.
You're perfect. Perfect.
Don't
And
worry,
you smile, you seem to enjoy the interview, which is very good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay?
Yes, sir.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good luck to you.
All the best.
You're
Yes.
doing
Thank you,
very
sir.
well.
Thank you, sir.